Woo! Happy Friday, everybody. We're going to kick this one off right. Anniversary time, bring it back. An old guest, an old friend. He was on the show almost exactly a year ago today on Valentine's Day, 2020, right before this shit hit the fan. But we had a great time. Before I bring him on, the message of the week. This is a continuation of what I said last week. Last week, I said social media is the jiu-jitsu of marketing. We're going to take that one step further this week. I'd love to get the feedback on this idea from a man here that digital outreach is the jiu-jitsu of marketing. With that, welcoming back to the show, my friend, training partner, neighbor, CEO, all kinds of crazy stuff, Craig Selinger.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be back. And yeah, last time we had so much fun. It was Valentine's Day. We did have a Valentine's sharing text this year on Sunday. But I'm happy to be back. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So what do you think about that quote? Being that last week I explained a little bit more about jiu-jitsu because the guy that was on, he actually was Stephen trained Hapkido, which they do a good amount of jiu-jitsu, but you having like a solid foundation in jiu-jitsu and understanding like the value system in jiu-jitsu and how it works. What do you think about that quote?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with jiu-jitsu, just to give a little background, so Jeremiah and I trained at the same dojo before the pandemic. But yeah, and as you know, Jeremiah is really into jiu-jitsu and it's a big piece of his life. But yeah, I think in terms of, let's say, digital marketing or the digital space, or let's say, even if you're a business and you want to learn foundations and you want to learn more advanced techniques later on, I honestly, I think for most businesses, it's really important to understand the foundationals for the digital space, and then to kind of build up on those for more advanced techniques, which is when you start jiu-jitsu, you got to learn the basics. And there's a lot of information out there. I think it's extremely overwhelming. I think someone like myself, I've been in the digital space for 15 years. So I am really excited to bring all this abstract information and to have people think about the foundations. The one thing that's a little different than I think jiu-jitsu than with the digital space is that some of the foundations are always the same. Some change a bit based on Google, because Google has an algorithm and it's kind of a pain in the ass. So sometimes you have to shift the foundations. It's very dynamic. But wholeheartedly, I think anyone out there who wants to increase their revenue, for almost all businesses at this point, I think there are opportunities out there in the digital world just to learn these basic foundational skills.
There is a correlation to that, though, in particularly these days in jiu-jitsu, because you have, like self-defense jiu-jitsu. You got jiu-jitsu for competition in the gi. You got jiu-jitsu for the competition in no gi. You got jiu-jitsu for MMA, and each of them have this like float where there are things you would do in one foundationally that you would not do in the other. You would find yourself in a bad place.
Yeah, no, and you just answered the question. Yeah, and I think it's understanding the context, which is really actually, like, it's funny now that we're processing this in the digital world out there. It's very context specific, and there are times where you have to do jiu-jitsu with your competition, and a lot of people, it makes them actually very uncomfortable. And it's funny. Yeah.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, no, it's funny. There's a lot of, I think with the digital space, it can bring up a lot of emotions that people they run away from. And I think it's the opposite. I think with guidance and structure, you can lean into it and learn a lot.
And that comes up often. I mean, we've heard it in jiu-jitsu all the time, but I hear a lot more business personalities saying, get comfortable being uncomfortable, force yourself into that region where you're like, I was in a clubhouse room the other day, and, it's funny. I feel like such a novice when it comes to social media, but you know, there are people
I don't
that
know.
are like,
Yeah.
I know, but like, that's just how I feel when I look at like,
Interesting.
but I'm always looking at the top. I'm always like,
Mhm.
that's where I want to be. So this is where I'm at right now. So on the whole panorama, I'd say, you know, I'm down on near the bottom feeders. But it's interesting to hear people. I was in a room yesterday and they were like, I just don't know how to get started.
Yep.
I'm like nervous to get to go on camera and just talk. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, I have no problem with that. In fact, I can't wait to do it, you know?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick. Yeah, and I'll give you a very example. Like when I started doing martial arts training, I had no experience with martial arts whatsoever. And many years ago, Professor Carroll was outside the dojo, literally pulled me in, and he's like, "Come train." Like literally,
Right.
he pulled me in. But fortunately, he did that. If he didn't do that, I probably would have never entered the you know the world of jiu-jitsu. And unfortunately, a lot of people need that. They literally need they is that fear factor, but they have to be pulled in. And if they're coached and they're nurtured and they start learning the basics, then they're fine.
Yeah.
It's that initial transition is the hardest.
Well, he's got good grips too.
Yes, that is true. I was
You were like, yeah, I'm
there.
gonna. Okay, I'm just gonna go with it.
Yeah.
The other aspect about that kind of fascinates me with the correlations between jujitsu and digital marketing is, you know, jujitsu always teaches you to, you know, about leverage. And you hear that in business all the time. And it was funny because I understood it in jujitsu. And I remember asking Professor Laurel one day, because she and I would have all these talks about business. And I was like, what do they mean in business, you know, like leverage? And she was like, it's no different. It's like,
Yep.
if you want to pull the arm and you've got your fulcrum here and you're pulling like in the middle of the arm, it's much less effective than if you slide down to the end and you're pulling the lever there. So in business, it's like really finding that end extreme where you're pulling and you're extracting, like I think of a wine press, you know, something like that, or orange juice. You know, you don't want to be up here. It's going to take a lot more effort. You want to be effortless, especially if you want to in some way scale your business and have some freedom where, you know, the book, The E-Myth, where he's talking about, he's distinguishing between working at your business or working for your business. So when you're like high up on the lever, you're kind of working at your business. It's like a lot of work, you know, and it's hard for
It,
you to break away.
it
Versus
it's
letting you
it's a
down.
great no, it's a great analogy. And for those that don't know about jiu-jitsu, I'm 5'8". I'm not a strong guy. I'm not like, I mean, I'm athletic, I'm not super athletic. But if you start learning certain foundational stuff, you can have leverage against people that may be at the same level or below you that are huge. So like one quick example, I'll remember this for the rest of my life. Tim, who's a
Damn!
monster at the
Woo!
dojo, early on, when we were it was Tim and myself, and we were starting from a standing position. It was the beginning, so I was so nervous, and he just starts kind of charging at me, and I'm like, ah. So fortunately, I resorted to a foundational chokehold, and I caught him, and he actually tapped out. And Professor caught it, so that was like a highlight of my career. Um, but again, this is again, I just instinctually, I remembered a foundational move and I use it to leverage, and he tapped out. Now, the nice thing about the remote space is that you can be going against multi-million-dollar companies, and you could actually leverage yourself with very little funding, and you can create a niche where you can actually outdo your competition in a specific context. And that's what's mind blowing about digital stuff. You can really, if you know some of the foundations, it doesn't mean you can take over necessarily a company, but you can find a space that you can maneuver in, and you can outdo the competition.
And that came up last week too. That was the idea, is leveraging, you know, we were talking specifically about social media because the gentleman that was on, you know, that was his bread and butter. He really, his areas of expertise was in content creation. And that was the martial arts connection that we made with the leverage, is that you can, you know, again, like you said, you're not going to take them over. But
No,
you can elbow some space in
yeah,
there. Like,
absolutely.
I'm
No,
still here.
I don't think people realize that. I think when they do look at the competition, they think it's an all or none. It's not an
Right.
all or none fight at all. That's the worst. If you're going to go all or none, you're going to
What do
lose.
they call that? Some zero game?
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
you cannot do it in the digital.
And that's
Yeah.
not the approach. And it's not the
Yes. Yep.
approach in,
Yep.
in martial arts, they often say your biggest competition is yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's true also when it comes to digital outreach. And just like the room we were having the discussion in yesterday, that was the thing. People were like, they had to push themselves beyond that comfortable spot to where they could actually have a breakthrough,
Yeah.
find find that space.
Sometimes you just have to learn one good move and stick with it, repeat
Yeah.
it, rinse and wash and master it. And then you can be kind of a master in your domain with that one move. You can then, leverage it by really maximizing that move. You can then move on to the next move, right? And start learning that, master it, and then boom, you have two moves. And it's the same thing digitally. That's the best approach, honestly, like jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and even Olympic judo players, those guys excel at like 3 or 4 things max.
Oh, Max, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, like that. They have 3 or 4 things. This is what I've read. I don't know, I'm not an Olympic judoku, but that's what I've heard many times is that they excel at less than a handful of really, really efficient moves that they can nail based on their body type and their experience and their practice. And there's like hundreds of throws, and they might like know little bits and pieces, but they have those 3 or 4 that it's just like that's how they got to where they are, not by knowing like all 67 or however many there are, official throws and the non-official throws. So that's a good point that you bring up. Like, find your focus, find your niche, like hammer it.
And I don't think that's what people don't realize. There's a structure in a sense to it. People don't see the structure. They just, it's again, like I remember when you're doing jiu-jitsu for the first time, you're like, what the fuck's going on? There's, and you're just like, whoa, you're overwhelmed.
Funny, I still feel that way.
I find that hard to believe, but that's the same thing. It's learning how, and when you train in jiu-jitsu, it's at some point, what you start to, it's like a language, and at some point you start recognizing, like, you have a term, oh, that's that move and that's that move. And same thing digitally, you have to, there's so much information out there that you have to start understanding some of the basics and learning it, and then identify, and then refining it. And that's the hardest part. It's the hardest part.
And right, just getting started, like they say early in jiu-jitsu, like just keep showing up. And it's the same. It's the same with digital. I like that point that you made too, because they always say like jiu-jitsu is endless. You'll never get to the end of it. And digital for sure, because at least like digital is just at the beginning, and like it's just starting to accumulate steam. So who knows where it's going to go? Exactly. The advancements in jiu-jitsu have not been as rapid lately, but still, like the wealth of information that's out there, you couldn't achieve it all in one lifetime.
No, and it's like even if you're a black belt, it's not like you're done learning. Like I figured it all out, I'm done. It's also people that don't realize, but the martial arts, that's not how it works.
Professor Laurel said when she got hers, she said it was the beginning of learning.
Interesting. That's a great quote. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna take with that great quote, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back, everybody. So hang tight, listen in for some more digital fodder. We'll be back in just a sec. Yes, everybody. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox, here with digital CEO, marketer, SEO specialist, and jiu-jitsu practitioner, Craig Selinger. We didn't just tell everybody really quick about your companies, like the fast version, what your day job is.
Yeah, so I have 2 companies. One is primarily a speech language therapy company where families reach out to us. We connect them with a speech language therapist that can come to their home or do remote work. I also have a tutoring company for all ages where students of various learning profiles, they come to us. We hook them up with a learning specialist tutor. We also do some work with adults as well. And same thing, we do virtual or we do in-home.
But over the last year, it's been like largely virtual.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been virtual. Yeah. And behind the scenes, what I do is I basically try to make sure that my businesses are running smoothly, looking for opportunities for growth. And definitely a lot of the business we get is through the digital realms where we bring clients in, and then we try to do our magic with the
And
clients.
previously you were doing a blend, it was kind of blended, right? You would do
It was
some in-home visits,
it
but
was
also virtual.
It was actually mostly in home.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, the pandemic, we had to really change our business model from primarily in home to primarily remote. And we also had to, even though I didn't have never had brick and mortar, even due to the pandemic, we had to make lots of changes.
Yeah,
And it doesn't matter, right? You
right.
had to pivot and shift, and we did.
Nice. And in the last segment, you mentioned kind of like you were talking about even against competition, you use like strategy and foundations and you kind of like weasel your way into a space. And I remember the first kind of focus group that we did here at the restaurant. I'm sitting in the exact space actually
Oh, nice.
that
That
we
was a good
were
time.
in that night. You brought up the idea of SEO, and the whole table kind of stopped. They were like, what's SEO? You know? And it was beautiful the way you described how you utilized it, where you looked at your competition, the other speech therapy, businesses, you understood what they were doing, and you weren't like, oh, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it better or whatever. You were like, what are they not doing? Where's a space
Mhm.
I can triangle in where they're not doing, and just carve out my niche and be kind of satisfied with that. And everybody was kind of like, oh, we should be doing that too.
They should
So
be. Yeah.
expound upon that,
Yeah.
please, because that was such a great conversation, and it was so short that night, but like we have now, it's just you and me, baby.
That's right. Yeah. So just to give people some background. So in terms of my two businesses, in terms of the competition, the speech language therapy, it's less competitive from a corporate standpoint. Tutoring companies, I'm going against multi-million dollar tutoring companies. So I'm like, a tiny little speck, and then I'm going against Goliath and lots of Goliaths. Versus speech therapists, I'm going more against the local competition. So there's two differences.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in terms of, just so people understand, SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. Um, so there's a standard definition, but how I'm going to define it for the audience is that for those that want to find more customers online, and let's say they don't want to rely on ads, say, how can I bring in customers without spending extra money? It doesn't include anything you do with your infrastructure for your website. So if you have a web designer and you're writing content, whatever, those are low costs in general. But if you want to avoid Google ads or any other ads, there's basically organic SEO, where someone types in a keywords, whether it's a plumber near me, and Google, you see that on the first page, you see the paid ads, and then there's a local pack, which you see usually it's the top 3 competition locally, and then you'll find listings under that. It could be anything related to plumbing. So in order to appear, ideally, statistically, most people don't go, 70% stay on page 1, they don't go to page 2. But if you want to be found on page 1 or say page 2, your website has to be optimized for what's called local search engine optimization. And what that means is that you have a website, it sends signals to Google, and Google looks at all the competition, and based on the keywords, they pick the local competition, which has the strongest signals. And those signals that are being sent to Google, you actually have full control of those signals. Now, we don't know, no one knows the exact logarithm of how to nail down the best overall signals to the T, but we do know in general what you need to do to change on your website to broadcast strong signals, stronger than the competition, so that you'll appear on page 1. And then the other piece, so that's one, it's basically, and that's worth money. So there's
Yeah.
actually, Google will actually look at keywords and give you a value of how much they are. So by having control of that space, by ideally appearing on page one, you're basically getting free traffic, which has a lot of value. And then if you're doing really well against the competition with the local pack, you're now boom on the top three for whatever the local keywords. And that local pack being on the top three is better than a Google ad because it's organic. It's not labeled Google ad. And statistically, people are going to look at, if you have good reviews and you're in that local pack, people are going to click on that. So now you're getting a lot of free traffic. So in order to send those strong signals, bring people for free organically to your website. That is huge. Now, there's other layers from there, but that's one. How do you get people's attention, and how do you get them to, it's a sales funnel. How do you get them to come to you? And again, it's by understanding those techniques with mostly local SEO. When I say local, again, what that means is that compared to local competition, not at a national level. So if I'm a plumber, and let's say, you're looking for a plumber in Brooklyn, that's local SEO. If you're looking to go to, if you have a plumbing school at the national level and you're going against national competition and they can do an online course to be a plumber, that's more national. But when you're going against people that are competitively locally, that's local SEO. So for me, I think it's amazing that you can find a space with certain keywords against multi-million-dollar companies, and you can get, with the right maneuvers, you can get on page one, and you can get on the local pack and below that and get high value free traffic onto your website.
Amazing. And then we talked about it briefly on the last show. I even have a tab open on my computer right now dealing with SEM as well.
Yep.
Which is search engine marketing. So the way I've kind of understood it is SEM is good at first. Like if you're just starting your company, just starting your brand, just starting your website, maybe like a 6-month paid run of SEM just to grease the wheels. But then you can retract that and then focus hardcore on your SEO. It's more value driven. It's free. You just have to be strategic. Like you said, there might be some mild investment on your website. But I've heard that's a really good approach to really getting the ball rolling, getting that traffic to your website.
When you work on local SEO, it does not happen overnight. It's like jiu-jitsu. Even if you're doing a basic move, it can take a few months to see results. So you cannot rely, there's no quick fix.
Yeah. I like that. I like that analogy. And then versus like, how does it work? Say and we'll get into this in the next segment. You are launching a social media, like a content production company. So you're purely digital. And you will be going against national competition because there's a lot of it out there. How, if it's less locally driven, what does the SEO approach look like versus like you were talking about getting into that local bundle? So like, Sam, I guess it's still kind of local, but I'm here in Brooklyn. I start this content, service company, and I'm going against companies even internationally, Canada, other parts of the world. My customers might not necessarily be here. How does the SEO approach look different for that, where you're like purely digital and not local at all?
So the nice thing about the framework is it's actually very similar no matter what industry you're in. So I'll break it down a little bit. So one is audience. Now, what people don't realize, I think this gets confused a lot from a digital perspective. You're really appealing to two different audiences. Sometimes it's the same audience. There's audience one is where you want traffic to your website, which helps with search engine optimization. Google records every visitor lands on your site, where they're from, has data on it, and how long they spend on your website. So the more high quality visitors that come, they engage with your website. Google's like, you're offering something that has a nice free value to those customers. And you actually have an authoritative rating scale. And the idea is that the more quality traffic you bring in and the more they engage, you increase your authoritative ranking, which will help in the long run getting it's one of the factors for being found on like say page 1, page 2. So that's one. So you want to nurture your audience by bringing in high quality content that they can learn and engage with. And even if you're not selling to them, that is fine, because that will ultimately help you with search engine optimization. Then there could be a separate audience, is your target audience, that who are you selling to and what are you selling? So you have to think about those audience. Sometimes there's an overlap,
Right.
sometimes they're not. Maybe you get really lucky in your industry, and that, which is I overall is probably really hard to find that one audience. So you're looking at different, once you define your audiences, you then come up with the SEO strategies based on your audiences.
Nice. Awesome. Awesome answer. We are going to take another break. And when we come back, I want to talk about some of the new things that Craig is interested in, and hear some more fascinating stuff from him. So you all, please return so you get this wonderful information from Craig. We'll be right back. Hang tight. All right, folks, bringing Craig Selinger back to the stage. We're here talking about digital marketing, digital outreach. He's the CEO. He's got a lot of experience with SEO, but lately he's been talking to me a lot about something different. You want to talk about that a little bit, Craig?
What was that?
Oh. Not that night we went out for drinks and got kind of, no, not that one. No, like what you were, you come by the restaurant a couple of times and talked about getting some people
Yes.
together. And you're offering, it's kind of a hot topic. And we talked about it, a couple of times. I've heard a lot of people mentioning something similar, but again, it seems like maybe we're not at ground zero. We've actually, just because of our experience and the cool people that we are, we're a little farther along. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's break it down.
Yeah, so we both live near Prospect Park in Brooklyn, and I was going for a run, and then like I had this idea. I'm like, I'm gonna run over to Della to tell Jeremiah this. So I run over. Fortunately, Jeremiah was available. He popped out of Della, and we were talking. And Jeremiah knows more about the space than I do. And I'm just like, like people that do just brick and mortar, and they're not really relying on their website to bring in traffic. They're not really relying on their website to bring in income. I'm like, man, due to the pandemic, I'm like, I hope people are starting to be forced to think a bit differently, where they can think more digitally minded. And I said it would be great to have like a group of local businesses that are brick and mortar, and we can come together and even talk about how they maybe want to transform or think more digitally minded. And to me, it's like because I'm biased from a digital perspective, but I just think it does not hurt to think digitally. I think it's only provides more opportunities to grow your business.
I totally agree with both statements, that there are a lot of brick and mortar that aren't really thinking that way. They've been, especially people that have had their business for a while. It seems like if you came in more recently to the game, it's just kind of inherently a part of it. At least that you need it, and you have to do some things digitally. But if you've had your shop 15, 20 years, it can be easy to be like, I don't know, like I just have a website, it just says like it's got our picture and our hours. And even I would include social media in that as well, that like that's definitely revenue generating. And a lot of people aren't either. I think either they're not utilizing it at all, or it's very underutilized. Where like a lot of people are still like on Instagram just throwing up like hot pictures with no real like call to action, nothing really like enticing people. Where I, being not vain really, maybe a little bit, but I mean, how many times do you have to stand in front of the mirror today for it to be vain? I mean, it's only 50, but I never had this approach to it, like, and I'm not a great photographer either, that it's going to be like the most amazing thing you ever saw. I'm just like putting out information, hoping that it elicits a response. And it seemed to work pretty well, especially during the pandemic. And I think there's a big opportunity for people that need that, who I think is a big opportunity for people who can provide that, because of the amount of people that need it, whether they know they need it or not.
Right.
The verdict is still out. Like some people are starting to get it, and they're like, pandemic hit it hard. was like, oh man, I really need to do this. The interesting part is, especially in the clubhouse rooms that I've been a part of, they almost all revolve around that. And then some of the mastermind sessions that I've done, a lot of it has revolved around that. And it's like, there's a lot of people that want to, they're keen to this. They're like, this is the thing. People offer this. People are making money doing this. I can do this and work for myself and not have to work the job that I hate. Or there's a lot of people that I like, they were in the fitness space, whether they were physical therapists or they were personal trainers or whatever. And they just lost a lot of revenue because people are scared to engage and work out. And like a lot of that stuff has to be one-on-one, you know, but they were used to helping people. So they're starting to see this other opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's like, as I said, it's like living on, you know, the same block as the dojo. You walk by, like, I know I should go. I know I should go. I know I should go. And same thing with,
I never had that problem.
You're like, I'm going to live.
My wife's like, you shouldn't go again today.
I'm gonna backflip my way over.
I would like hide packed bags like at the wine store and at Della that had clean ghee. So I'd be like, oh, I was joking with this guy yesterday. I was like, oh yeah, we need milk. Okay, yeah, I'll be back in like an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it's but yeah, going back to it's the same thing. It's getting over that hump. Once you realize it's a liberty. It's like you just, you know, doing the stuff at the dojo just makes you a better person. It's better for civilization. And same thing if the digital space, if you're open and you're coached and you learn about it, you actually are more liberated in a way where you now have more options and you can become, again, more independent. And it does give you actually a stronger sense of control, which people don't realize.
Right. So are you basing this off of, and it could be a combination, is it feedback that you've gotten that people need this solution? Or is it that you're just noticing that it's not happening and it's something you're aware of and have experience with, or kind of a combination of
I'm just going to, I think so from personal experience. Okay. So I have no training. I've never taken a business course in my life. In college, I have no background in business, like straight up from an academic perspective. I just kind of stumbled upon the stuff on my own, and I've really refined it in the last few years, particularly the last year to the pandemic. I've really focused on, it's like hitting the gym or hitting the dojo pretty hard and refining it. So a lot of this is self-taught is one. And then two, in terms of the results, before the pandemic, my businesses have been growing about 20% per year in general. And that I must be doing something right, you know. And then, due to the pandemic, one of my businesses has been doing really well. The other one is doing okay. But I feel the one that's doing okay is will be better positioned, definitely for the next school year. And definitely in terms of some of the results, like this week, I'll give you examples. I spoke to a business owner in San Diego who is for one of my tutoring companies. We do something called executive functioning coaching, where we help adults who need help with organizational systems, finishing tasks. So a very successful young guy with a business in San Diego. He found us online, right? I spoke to a woman today from Maryland who's looking for a specific type of tutoring for her second grader. So to me, those are results. Like, they're finding us, and I'm talking to these people, and aside from that, again, from my studies of doing, what I've learned self-taught, I'm learning from people that also are businesses that have blown up, SEO people that are raking in a lot of money in very successful companies because they've mastered their black belts in SEO. Mm-hmm. And just watching them, what they're doing and explaining for free what they're doing. Then it's not like a hidden gimmick or at all. They literally, you can learn all this without spending a penny. It's not like the secret society that you have to enter. This is all free information out there, which is,
but it's a grind.
but it's what?
Grind though. Like you have to work.
I'm not saying you don't. Absolutely. I've grinded my way through. But at least I've gotten to the point where, you know, I can share this information so people can grind less, you know, they
Yeah,
can focus on certain
sure.
things and grind through those moves versus trying to figure out which moves to focus on.
And the other people that I know that have entered into this arena and started to offer these services and actually, like, you know, gotten clients, there's two different kind of services that people want. Some of it is just like a preliminary kind of coaching. I'll help you get set up. I'll teach you some of my tricks so that, again, you're not starting all the way at the bottom. You don't feel completely overwhelmed. We'll break through that like first uncomfortable layer together, and then like essentially the ship sails off. Versus there's other people that it's just like they want everything done for them. They want just like, can you take care of this for me? So you think it's important to kind of be able to offer both and have different rates and know what, especially your labor costs, are going to be involved with the done for you version.
Yeah, no, and it's a good point. I want to just quickly talk about that. So for me personally, like 90, like almost close to 100% at everything I wanted to learn on my own. And to me, it's like I had to get down and dirty. And then once I learned, like, let's say certain basic techniques and I understood it, I was then allowed to hand it off to someone else. And that's how I made a few mistakes for certain things. Look, I'm like, I don't want to learn it or whatever. And I handed it off. And I realized in retrospect, I really have to learn some of the basics. I don't need to go to a high level with everything, but at least if I know certain basics and I can hand it off to someone, I find in general that's the best approach. Now I know some people, they don't have the time and they're just like, yeah, just tell me what's up, I'll pay and do that. You can do that, but but in the long run, it's again, you don't. It's again, you're having the awareness of what they're doing and giving them feedback in the long run is the best way. And that's the hardest part because you have to really carve out some time again to know the basics. You don't have to become a black belt in this stuff, but if you do learn certain basics and understand it in the long run, it will definitely help.
Nice. Cool. One more break and we're going to come back and wrap this puppy up. All right, everybody. So hang tight. We'll be right back. All right, last round. Let's make it our best. I'm kind of disappointed, Craig. You don't have props. You don't have cards this time.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah, that would have been.
I was
thinking. Dude, last year he was like slipping. Our last interview was in studio. It wasn't Zoom. You were actually. I only did 2 or 3 more in-person interviews after yours. And then everything. The last one I was supposed to do in person was Friday, March 13th.
Oh, wow.
And the night before, my guest was in Vegas earlier that week. And the night before, he had gotten back and he was like, man, I don't feel good. And I was like, do not come in. Like, nobody knew what was going on. And like Manhattan was kind of like emptying out that day. I was like, this is kind of strange. And I did it. I went into the studio and just had 4 people call in.
I kind of remember, I think we were texting. You're like, I'm gonna go in.
I'm gonna go. It was so strange, but we pulled it off.
The next time we do it in person, I am for sure bringing props. I was thinking about that. I was thinking hard. I promise. Next time we do it together.
Not for nothing. I just got. Oh, the other thing I did recently was I mentioned Frank Kern in one of those rooms because it came up a lot where people were like. And what I want to do in the last segment is a little surprise for you.
Sure.
A lot of people say, I don't know how to sell this. I don't know how to sell myself. And I just keep saying, don't. Just build relationships. Like just be that super duper awesome person. Like really develop your we've been hot lately on I think we talked about it last night, your 3 pillars, your mission, your mission statement, your value system, your culture, build your community off of that. Just go hard to where people are just like, that person's just so awesome. And this is what they do. And I kind of need it. They're never pushy, you just got to be there. Marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, no, it's a huge point. It's authenticity, right? And social media is not my forte, but they say social media, it's all about authenticity. And I think no matter what business you have, it's not easy. There's your authentic self, maybe who you are personally, and then business, it could be the same. Whatever it is, I think you need to somehow discover who your authentic self is in the business realm. And that's who you are. And then once you find out who you are, that's what you offer to your customers.
Yeah.
And that's what sells. It's not, you don't want to take a product and then say, hey, I'm going to try to sell it. It's not how it works. It's just, hey, I'm going to be my authentic self. I'm here to help. What's going on? I'll give you some advice how it can help. And, if you want to move forward,
Yeah.
that's the best way to do it.
So great segue, because my little surprise for you is this. Say you get this thing you talked to me about, your offering together.
Mm-hmm.
How do you've done it with your other businesses? What are your first like 3 steps in marketing it to create the top of the funnel to get I keep talking about banana peels at the top of the funnel. I just want to lay the top of the funnel with a bunch of banana peels and make it a soft funnel. So people just kind of sit there like, whee! That's like I said it in one of these masterminds, and this guy I think he's from India. He was like, that's beautiful. That's what we all want. And I was like, oh, that's what I was like. I thought I just made something up. He's like, no, but that's a good analogy. It's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. So the target audience who would the target audience be?
I mean, just what are your first steps? You've got this offering. Yeah. You're going to market it digitally.
Yeah.
What do you do?
So I just want to be sure I'm clear. So the audience, you're talking about people that want to get into the digital space, like
no,
brick and mortar people, or
your customers.
My customers.
You're helping the brick and mortar.
Got it.
What are your first 3 steps in attracting them to you?
Got it. So if I'm a brick and mortar company and I want to create a sales funnel and I want to bring people in, sorry, I just want to make sure I understand.
No. Okay. You, Craig Selinger.
Yes.
Have this offering to help brick and mortar people create. How are you going to market your offering to the brick and mortar?
Got it. Sorry, I'm a little slow here. Just want to make sure I understand.
Right.
So what
I know you haven't trained in a while.
It's slow. It's embarrassing.
I trained today.
I don't want to. Yeah, it's that when that day comes, it's going to be the most humbling experience of my life.
I can't wait.
So what I would do, the sales funnel for those people, I would say, I didn't think about this, but in terms, which is fine. I would start with what I mentioned before. I would help them figure out their target audiences in terms of traffic, why they would want to bring increased traffic to their website, try to convince them why they should, and who that audience is to bring traffic. And it may be something different than what they're selling.
But how are you going to find those people?
Oh, how am I going to find those people? Yeah. So if I had to find those people, the best way would be, one, I would create a course. I would create an outline. And then somehow would have to market it to find those people. And then I would try to offer something for free, where I would have them test me out in a small group, where I would offer it absolutely for free. And then from there, I would try to have them document their narrative, their story, for where they started kind of before the course, their journey during the course, and then later, to see how this course helped them, and to have actual, video footage or whatever of how it helped, improve their businesses. And in terms of outreach and finding them, it would be, I would guess social media would be a really good way. Try to tap into, again, local people, whether it's, listservs or email blasts, or you find someone or businesses that are interested, and you say, hey, listen, use them as a advocate for yourself. Say, I know you have a business, and maybe you have other businesses in mind that, we can work, create a community around this and work together. So it's finding what you can offer. It's something that's new, offering it really for free. And then 2, trying to find your audience, for who can sign up. Again, make that leap. And again, people that are going to make that leap initially, you really have to have, you want to convince them it's kind of risk-free. Like, what do you got to lose? You're not paying any money. Try it. So that's how I would kind of create a funnel for that.
And where would the hypothetical course reside? I mean, would you have a website?
So you would need a landing page, right?
Right.
So so in order, whatever you're offering, you need a landing page. Now, a landing page can just be an additional page on your website. Doesn't mean you have to start a new website. So if you have a website, just create a separate landing page. If you don't have a website, people don't realize you don't need, nowadays, you don't need elaborate websites. You could literally have a few pages. And I think actually that's going to be the trend, honestly, is less pages, the better at some point.
Yeah.
And simplifying actually a lot of the information that's on websites. It's going to be all about quality. But I would create a sales funnel where you have a page, you would have to somehow, again, they would have to, whether it's an ad, something on a local listserv, something that draws their attention. It's going to get them motivated to a call to action, because that's the biggest thing. It's like, you can't just, you have to, it's called response marketing. You have to elicit a response. If you don't have responsive marketing, people are not, you don't expect them to respond. So you have to motivate them to respond. And then you got to get them on your landing page. And your next step on your landing page is you have to get their contact information as soon as possible. So then you again have to have a call to action. You have to elicit response, something to motivate them to get their information. Once you get their information from there through the sales funnel, my goal is to reach out and speak to them as soon as possible and talk to them for free for how I can help. And then from there, again, and that's the sales funnel. So it's really, how do I get them over to my website? How do I get their information? And how do I make that human connection with them?
Wonderful. And again, I mean, how many times did we hear in jiu-jitsu elicit a response?
Like, yes, big time. Yes.
You pull to get a push, you push to get a pull, like all those things. Man, that was good. That was really good.
Big time. It's that, again, it sounds easy from an out, but it's not.
Right.
That subtlety of eliciting a response, and it's the same thing with direct marketing. You have, the expectation is, if you're not trying to elicit a response, it's a waste.
Yeah. And I like how you laid it out. Like, it's not just one time, like you do it at the top of the funnel.
Multiple times.
Do it, you're like constantly doing it. So like the whole time, like once you get that engagement and getting their information is key. And with that, I would like your information. Where can people find out about you or get in contact with you if they have questions, if they would like some free information on this? Give us your information, Craig.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn for Craig Selinger. That's one great way. You can also just reach out to me through either my companies. One is tembatutors.com. One is brooklynletters.com. But yeah, definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to get the conversation started.
Awesome. Any email address that goes directly to you, or?
You could do, I'll give you one of my business. You could AIG@tembatutors.com. So
you got to do that. You got to do that again real quick. You broke up for a second.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so CRAIG, Craig, at Temba, which is THEMBA tutors.com.
I like how you paste that, like people are actually writing it.
Yeah.
That's dope. That's dope. Yeah. Awesome. Well, we got to wrap it up, man. Thank you.
No, thank you. This
really awesome, man. Really
I can't wait to do it next time in person.
We're going to do it in person. We're going to have props. I might dress up in costume. I'm going to come with a gi on and freak you out.
Oh my God. I'll be running the other way.
All right. Well, thank you so much. The rest of you, thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next week. Everybody have an awesome weekend. Peace out.
Have a great weekend.